Let's start the conversation looking at the World Economic Forum, the conference taking place in Davos today, starting today. Now, the theme for that conference is rebuilding trust. Let's start the conversation by looking at the theme for the conference. Why do you think it's strategic to come up with this kind of theme for the conference, looking at rebuilding trust among nations? The question is, the issue of trust, does it exist in the first place? And why is it so critical at this time to talk about it?
You know, I'm happy that you are looking at keywords. And, you know, when people use a keyword or a theme, there is always a reason behind it. And yes, we have to ask, is there any trust? My answer is no. The world does not trust these, you know, large people pushing their own agenda and coming up with themes, you know, to what I would say fool the public. Rebuilding trust. They know now that nobody trusts what they have had to say. They are not a decision-making body to commit to decisions. But what they do, what they all do, is that they're influencers. They come with their own agenda to push their own agenda and ask the world, especially when we talk in terms of relevance to Africa, Nigeria, etc., to believe in them and believe in what they say. What trust do we have now in those influencers and those organizations, which, if you check them, they are really billionaire organizations, all pushing for capitalism. They are not really interested, if you look back at what they have achieved or what they have tried to do, anything for the poor of the world. Let's just put it into two halves, capitalism and poverty. At the moment, poverty has doubled, tripled since they have started. So what have they done? What can you say you trust from what they have said in all these non-decision-making meetings that they have had? All they have done is pushed their own agenda, whether it's the billionaires of Bezos or Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. All they're looking for is capitalism. And these are the type of people who are gathered. It's what I call a grand party. How can you have 2,000, over 2,000 people coming together, talk shows, and they don't have the right to make any decisions? So you just have politics on one side, and you have capitalism on the other side, and together the two shall meet. Not that the two shall not meet, the two are meeting. So what are you saying? If you are a capitalist and you are coming to meet me as a politician, what are you trying to do? Are you not trying to influence me as a politician and the politics of my country? That is the question we have to ask. So there is no trust. Do people trust politicians, especially when they're driven by people who are influencers because of their capital? No. If they are interested in really changing things and building trust, build trust practically, implement trust. For example, let's use Africa, for example. Come to Africa, match government strategic policies and put your money behind those strategic policies to support the country, alleviate poverty, you know, whether it's sharing in the wealth and resources of the country or ensuring that the people in the country share in your capital. Be a benefactor, not to keep introducing agendas that is going to increase your capital, because you've got the money now. It's not that you're looking for capital. You have capital. Make that capital work. Stop all this nonsense of going to World Economic Forums and a talk show and just trying to influence the politicians, because when they say governments, it's the politicians who come there, meet with them, and they say, oh, if you do this for us, we will give you this. Not that it's going to trickle down to the country. That is my view.
All right. The World Economic Forum started in 1971, even though it started with the name European Management Forum. Now, years after, would you say that the purpose for which this forum was created has been achieved, looking at the level of participation and the evolution that's happened to this forum over the years. What's your take on this?
Well, the take is twofold. Initially, what was it? World European Forum, right?
You can hear me.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm saying in the first instance, it was catering for a World European Forum, not so?
That's true. You're right, sir.
Right. So let's look at it in two stages. Yes, it has achieved what it needed for the Europeans. The European had and got their European Union. The Europeans had a coming together with a single market. The Europeans got a single currency. That's success for them. So they were very, very focused on ensuring that the World European Forum got what it needed. They now expanded that to the World Economic Forum, the rest of the world. What has the rest of the world been able to achieve from this forum? The answer is not the same. Why don't we, for example, have, if you were very serious about what you did, have the very same achieved for Africa? Africa economics needs a united forum like the World European Forum achieved, which is a union, right? We have the African Union. We have now the ACFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Why don't you help to encourage Africa, for example? And I keep, going to our continent, why don't you now implement some of that capital to ensure that the economics of the continent benefit the continent, just as it did Europe, because Europe was able to achieve within that short period of time a single monetary system, which Africa needs, a single unit and a single market, which Africa needs as well. So for me, the European Union was achieved through the World European Forum. Now, if you're talking about the World Economic Forum, the countries that need the benefit, India, Africa, those areas that need the input of outside capital, foreign direct investment, to ensure that they achieve their economic goals. Europe achieved their economic goals. Let's have the other parts of the world achieve their economic goals. Let's be serious, because that was what the first initial idea was that was achieved in Europe. And now we need to achieve that elsewhere.
If I heard you correctly, are you insinuating that the essence of changing the name to World Economic Forum hasn't been achieved by the fact that you still have the grip of the European countries on the forum, and then there's also this bias that the United States set the agenda for the world? Are you insinuating that it hasn't now achieved the purpose of making it encompassing?
I'm not insinuating. I'm saying it practically. You're absolutely correct. Who sets the agenda? What is the agenda? And who's in charge of what is to be discussed at these forums? You're absolutely, it's not in a situation. It's there, plain to see, that it's an agenda, and the agenda is set, again, although it's a non-decision making body, but it's an influencing body. And they are trying to influence the rest of the world to fit into their agenda. Just look at who's invited. Look at who's invited, and look at their track record of what they have done at the expanded world economics in reality. They have done absolutely nothing to improve the lives of people in the wider economic society, which is the continents of Africa, the continents of Asia, including, places like India, Bangladesh, etc. So let's be real. These people set agendas, invite these people to what I'll call a swan, of a week enjoyment in ski resorts, to do what? Those things, it should be scrapped. Keep to your World European Union and your World European Forum, and keep achieving what you want for yours. Let others. Why don't we have, as Magufuli said, why don't they come to Africa? Why don't they go to other locations and hear from those leaders and not choose who they want to come to the from? You have to be invited. I mean, can you imagine? You have to be invited. So in other words, it's it's jobs for the boys. Who do we invite this year and why? Okay, we want to invite this particular country because they have this that we can achieve our capitalist goals. I like to be very straight talking and straightforward in what we need to say. We need to challenge these people about their agendas. What is your real agenda? Because we have not seen anything that has benefited the world economics.
All right, talking about the agenda for the forum, if you look at the agenda for the forum, these are things that are not just exclusive, but they are things that are universal. And with the fact that the organizers have given a level playing field, make it open for participants, for their voices to be heard, don't you think they are also trying to make it obvious that it's also to pursue the world agenda or the global agenda rather than looking at the interests of the European countries?
Right. Yes, they have opened it up and put topics there. But what I am saying is those topics and expanding it globally. What is the reality behind that? What has been achieved? What do you set as goal objectives and follow it through? Since it's a non-decision making body, they cannot be bound to carry through with anything that's discussed there. They cannot be, because it's a non-decision making body. It's not something that you can say you are part of this community of people and we make a peer decision and then you commit this amount of funds for achieving this. We have not seen that happen in reality over the years, because they can walk away after they have left there and say, well, we have other priorities and do not need to put our capital into these decisions that may have been discussed, but not committed to in any way real, and the ability to pursue that, because the next year there's going to be another theme again. How do you have any measurement mechanism to say, what have we achieved from 2024 to 2025? What commitment do they have for that? That's what I would like to throw to you and perhaps the audience at large. What are the commitments that they make that are followed through to the letter?
All right, now let's focus on the agenda for this forum. The first thing on the list is the achieving security and cooperation amid rising geopolitical tensions. And the reference here is to look at the geopolitical tensions taking place in the Middle East, for instance. Looking at the war going on between Israel and Gaza. What impact do you think the submissions at this forum will make on the ongoing war, looking at that of Ukraine and Russia as well?
Right. So you see, let's be very practical, Femi. Look at it again. You are concentrating, which is what they are. You are reflecting what they have said. On the agenda is security. And what are they pushing? What is happening in Israel and the Middle East? What is happening in Ukraine and Russia? What is actually happening in the Congo? What is happening in West Africa? What is happening in East Africa? Why are these not brought up to the top of the table? I have to be thinking, we have to put forward our issues, our security issues. We have major security issues on the continent of Africa. But instead, this agenda is pushing security in the Middle East, security in Russia and Ukraine. So it's keeping those issues at the top of the table. So all invited world leaders, they're asking you to concentrate and focus on those, whilst you are blindsided real issues that concern us as Africans, that concern us, on the continent. I would like to see that put into the agenda as part of the, if you want to seriously discuss security, let's have that as part of the agenda. I am insular in my thinking where this is concerned. The Asians can put forward their issues. Other continents can put forward their issue. But you don't put forward and say, we must now focus on the Middle East. We must now focus on Ukraine and Russia. What the hell does that have to do with what is happening to the rest of the world? Inclusiveness means talking about what's happening on the continent. There are several security issues we have on the continent. What is happening in other parts of the world, Asia, put all those things on the agenda. Show us that you really have expanded an inclusiveness to the world security issues, not just what you want us to focus on.
All right. Now, let's look at the ongoing war between Israel and Gaza, because that's just a reference here. What do you think can be done differently now to ensure that peace is being restored in that region? And then what will be the lessons for other regions? Because you're talking about the Middle East now. And what could be the lessons for other regions looking at the thrust of the controversy going on between Israel and Gaza?
Right. We talked about rebuilding trust. How can you rebuild trust when the players and obvious genocides that are taking place, because it is now public, in the public domain, and people have been making enough demonstrations, and even South Africa has joined in the fray to take, Israel as a country to the International Court of Justice. It means that we do not have trust in the powers that be to come to decision makings that ensures that lives on both sides are, protected. War, as I said in a previous interview, should be avoided by peace talks in the first place and discussing what are the issues. What are the issues that need to be ironed out and ensure that we have reason and rationale to avoid the eventual conflict. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East, since it is the issue that has been brought up and the issue that is in the agenda, is how do you ensure that apparent genocide is avoided and people are not displaced and people can live a life. You see it on television. It's nothing hidden now. It's on television. On both sides, you've had the initial attacks on Israel, which of course was horrific, but you have to ask what pushed them to do what they did. And then on the other side, the response. It is an ongoing war of attrition, destroying a country, destroying a people. Is the retaliation, how do we say, is it, you can't call killing measurable, but is it, an ongoing situation where you continue to bomb hospitals, homes, after you're going, a percentage of the people who are the militants in a country, is there not another method to be able to ensure that the lives of babies, hospitals, and people going about their daily lives are protected? Not everyone is involved in violence. So meeting to discuss resolving those issues, the World Economic Forum or the participants from the organizers, the people who have organized it, should say, put a stop and ensure there's a stop of what is going on in the Middle East and come to the table and discuss properly how do we stop this war of attrition, because a war of attrition is not helpful for humanity and for humanitarian reasons. We must stop this issue of retaliating with too much firepower. This is what it is, I can level your country, I will level it. Why?
Let's still talk about the issue of security, which is part of the first on the list for the agenda for this meeting, because I want us to have an extensive conversation as regards this conference. Now, part of the issues that we have to focus on the issue of global terrorism. You know, you're aware of the recent bombing attack on the sea that happened recently. Now, what do you think can be achieved or be done utilizing this kind of forum to lend a voice to the world to tackling terrorism globally?
Right. One of the things that we keep forgetting is that some of the people attending these forums, as I said before, have their agendas. They have their fingers in the pie of supplying arms and ammunition, and are also interested in the resources of the world. And again, I will steer the conversation back to Africa. It has been found out, and you check it yourself, that the very same people are very much involved in resource exploration and exploitation. And therefore, they find it convenient not to go after stopping terrorism in certain countries, because whilst the terrorism is going on or are being fueled or funded even by themselves, it's been found out, the exploitation of resources are continuing. I want us to be very objective here that, you know, they are not so-called, you know, saviors for people who are involved in the conflict regions. There's always an agenda behind the conflicts, the terrorism that goes on in most parts of the world, whether it's oil, whether it's gold, diamonds, lithium, cobalt. You know, you only have to look at behind all of these, who are the people that are benefiting? You know, who are the people that are exploiting? Who are the people that are taking out the resources, you know, landing on strips and moving out gold and other diamonds and other resources? Who are the people that inflicted the wars in Iraq, in Libya, and other parts of the world? So to talk about terrorism and security, let's deal with it in a very real and practical way. Stop it. And how do you stop it? It is quite easy to stop these terrorisms by ensuring that they are not supplied with arms and ammunition. Where do they get it? Where do they get the money to buy, you know, so much arms and ammunition to continue conflicts in regions where it is ongoing? You know, terrorist money can always be tracked. The banks knows, you know, who has what. They know how to find where the money, you know, as they say, follow the money. But some of them are very complicit in aiding and abetting the people whose resources fund their banks. So they will keep quiet. They'll keep mum. You check most of the banks and the billions that they have in it. If any of those billionaires says, I want this money to go here, which bank is going to say no? Which bank is going to reveal that their biggest depositor, you know, has been funneling money to a particular organization or individual? None. They won't, because their aim is to keep and continue to have increased deposits. And whoever brings that in is the king of the bank, not the poor teller and or the poor manager, but of course the executives are complicit. They know. They move the money. They help move the money. They find ways of moving the money around. So let's look at, one, the arms and ammunition, who supply them, and two, where do they get the money from? We should be practical about these things. Yes, stop terrorism. How? Let's get practical. Follow the money, follow the trail of arms and ammunition supply. If we can do that and we can stop it, yes, then you are doing something very real and practicable.
All right. Earlier, while you were making your submission, you questioned why references are not being made to the insecurity issues in Africa or West Africa. Now that you have representatives from this part of the continent, attending this conference, what kind of proposition would you have expected from these delegates in order to change the narrative? Now that they can speak for themselves, you have representatives from West Africa or Africa who are attending this forum. What kind of steps or proposition will you expect from them in order to change the narrative as regards the agenda, even for the next one coming up?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. If I was the leaders from West Africa and we have been invited and we will go with our own agenda. What are they going to meet? They are going to meet capital, isn't it? This is a good forum where you have trillions of dollars represented by the billionaires and the captains of industry there. So go and meet them on the basis of investment on your terms. So you say, this is my government. This is strategic policy we want. We want investment in health. We don't want you to dictate our health policy, but we would like you to invest. In other words, give us your capital. We will make use of it. Now, I know people will say, okay, they will say, we need to control that because of corruption and other ills that African countries have demonstrated, to capital inflow. But you can marry with the governments and their strategy, control the money and the flow of the money, ensuring that you see where your money is going on the strategic policies that particular government has come and said, I want to engage with you. So, for example, you have a health agenda for the country and they can see what the rollout is. You can actually utilize the money, purchase whatever is required for them that they say they need, and make sure it gets to the population, not into the pockets of the individuals who are involved in asking for that capital. That, for me, is a way of marrying strategic government policy with capital that is available, because these people have capital available. So if you're going to meet with them, engage them on a participation basis. This is my policy. You mean well? Okay, this is what I'd like to do. Hold your money, but bring the money in a controlled manner. This is how transparent this particular strategic policy of ours is, and I would like you to invest, right? Or I would like you to participate. And if this is a benefit of foreign direct investment that they can get and truly be able to attract, then I think they're there for a good reason, and therefore they can tap into money that's available to do and carry out their policies instead of having to borrow from World Bank and IMF, etc. This is, I would say, free money. And when I mean free money, I don't mean that it is entirely free. There may be conditions, but at least there are people who have the capital and can be influenced by those governments to come and participate in foreign direct investment in my country on terms that we can mutually agree.